For the people out there that maybe haven't heard of you or your music, do you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself?
So my name is Sanjeev, aka Superman on the Beat, and I'm a producer, activist, and promoter. And when it comes to my music, like I produce a lot of, I guess I kind of call it genreless. I like genre flair that kind of mixes a lot of genres, and my influences from like rock, metal, hip hop, a lot as well. And also like a touch of Indian influence as well, like percussion. I use a lot of tabla and stuff like that in a lot of my music, and a lot of like Indian and Bollywood samples and stuff like that. So yeah, it's kind of like a cool melting pot of a lot of different styles, and I think that's kind of what makes it so unique. So I produce for like a lot of artists up here in Scotland, and I release like as an artist. So kind of think Metro Boomin kind of vibe. It's quite cool to be able to do that as a producer. And also it's cool just to be able to like jump around genres, which I feel like is a little bit harder when you're doing like vocals and like that. So it's kind of been good to release a bunch of different stuff, which is really cool. And then recently, I was on the mic for the first time, so I released my own spoken word project, which has elements of like punk and hip hop. Um, so yeah, that came out about a couple of months ago. That was funded by Youth Music, who are doing really cool stuff. So they funded that, and it was really cool just to talk about issues that are facing disabled people, and my own experiences in the UK because I feel like it's not talked about enough. And I feel like we need to hear more voices from disabled artists. So
And obviously, the EP, like you said, it's your first one with you on the mic rather than on the beat per se.
yeah,
It's called Breathe,
yeah,
which I'm presuming it as well is partially in reference to yourself as well, because for the listeners that are not maybe listening to this rather than watching this, they might not have been able to tell that you yourself are a less able person. So do you
yeah.
want to just tell us a little bit about that?
It's quite interesting. So I'm like, I've got a condition called Duchenne muscular dystrophy, which is a muscle wasting condition. I don't know people. It's kind of there's a lot more awareness about it now. So I used to be able to walk up until I was about 9, and basically your muscles like slowly like deteriorate over time. So that's the condition I have, and it means that I don't really. I kind of need help with a lot of things with like PA and my mum and dad. That help with a lot of things. And I only really have movement in like my hands. So that's kind of how I do everything, just with like my mouse. Um, and that's like how I produce and all that stuff. So I guess that gives you a bit of context. And yeah, like in terms of the name Breathe, like I was in relation to my ventilator that I use. Um, because sometimes I feel like it's funny because sometimes I feel like people forget to just breathe and just be and just breathe and take things in for a minute and just stop. So that's kind of where that came in because I think one things I'm talking about in the project, like it was quite personal and something that I had to like sit on for a while. So yeah, that's kind of where that comes in. But also just to bring more awareness um, to my disability and also like the fact that I use a ventilator because a lot of people don't really know like what it is, for example. And like people presume like it's oxygen or whatever, but a lot of people don't really know that's just air. So yeah, it's all linked in.
So that's a bit about like the background behind the like lyrical element of the project. But in terms of the actual sound of it, obviously you've opted to go more for like a spoken word type of approach rather than say you rapping, and also in terms of the sound of the instrumental, although like you've said your music that you've produced is genreless, I would associate you a lot of what we've played at least with more of like retro hip hop kind of vibe. But
Yeah,
then this project, having listened to it, it's a lot more sort of experimental. You've got like a bit of guitar, a bit of like grungy noises in there, a bit like electronic kind of vibe. So what kind of was your thinking behind the actual sound of the project?
most of the stuff that I've released has been like hip hop centered. kind of modern and like old school hip hop mostly. But like I've kind of sprinkled a little hint here and there of like rocky elements and like guitar samples and stuff. But I kind of wanted to lean more into my influences, which is like growing up, I listened to like heavy metal and grunge and punk. Um, so I really wanted to lean into that sound more, and I felt like my own project was like the place where I could do. I felt like I had more freedom because it wasn't like with another artist. So I feel like I had a bit more freedom in doing like making it sound exactly like how I wanted it to make it sound, and bring in those other influences, which is cool.
Sure.
So yeah, I think like Fight for Our Freedom and System Wasn't Built for Us is probably my two favourite tracks on it. And they're kind of like trap mixed with like grunge and metal. So yeah, it was cool to do that, and hopefully I'll be doing a bit more. Um, yeah, I'm still kind of making all different genres, so hopefully I can release a bit more kind of in the rock alternative world. And also like R&B as well. So I'm trying to kind of like work with all sorts of artists.
And this was shown as well, like how many different kind of artists that you've worked with as part of this new BBC mini documentary that you've released as well.
Yeah.
So for those that don't know, it's out there and it's called Superman of Scottish Hip-Hop. It's available on iPlayer. I checked like this morning. It's at least like another like 10 months or something, so people can definitely go and watch that. But how did that documentary actually come about then?
Actually, they heard of the Spoken Word Project. Um, I think they heard my music as well. And obviously they knew of like Hip Hop Scotland, which is the promotion company that I run, and we do like regular nights in Scotland with like hip hop artists. So I think they kind of heard about the tour, and they thought it'd be really cool to do like a documentary because um, everything I do is very like community driven, community led. So I just think working together and like collectivism, collaboration is the way that we're all going to grow. So that's really what I'm about. So I think they kind of thought that was cool because I feel like that's quite rare in the like modern music industry where community is still at the centre. So I think they kind of saw that and they saw what I was doing and they just dropped me an email saying that they wanted to have a chat. And it just kind of came about like that. But it's crazy because it just sort of happened. Uh, yeah, it was cool though. And I think it really shows like it's like me in 14 minutes. I feel like so if when somebody asks who am I feel like I can send them that and they can get a sense of the type of person I am and what I do. So yeah, it was really cool, and it's really opened a lot of doors in terms of collaborations with other artists. Yeah, it was really cool to make as well. I think it took about four full days, um, which was quite tiring, but yeah, it was really fun, man. It's cool just to have that there for people to show people like or like 10, 20 years. Get what I mean? So I think that's a cool thing to have. So yeah, I'm really happy with that.
Yeah, definitely. And like going back to what you were saying about community as well,
Yeah,
definitely was getting that vibe from the project, especially when you had like your listening party and you had everyone there. Like they were the first people being able to hear this first project of yours that actually has you on the mic. One thing that I didn't think that we saw in the project though in the documentary was how you got to that stage though. Like I know we mentioned it mentioned that you obviously started producing during lockdown, but and it was nice to see that you've got that community of people around you. But
yeah.
how did that community actually come about? Like how did people come to know of you as a producer and as a reliable person that they can depend on for their music?
I'd say the root of it is the fact that why community is so important to me as a whole, and I think because growing up um, as like a disabled South Asian person, like in Scotland or Ayrshire, just like predominantly white, um, I was like the only brown person in the school. I'm like the only one of the only disabled people as well. So like I never really had a community. I never really had like a group of people growing up around me or like a kind of friend circle like that. So community was always something that was really important to me because I know what it's like to not have that, if that makes sense. So that's kind of where it's rooted from. So I think that's why I kind of tried to implement that and make that a thing in the Scottish scene. I think it kind of built up through, I guess, the fact that I was like talking to a lot of people. I went to a lot of local shows where I didn't really know anybody, just to get involved and to chat with folk. And I think people just slowly got to know me through that. And then obviously the Hip Hop Scotland shows that we've been doing for about 2 years now, that I've been running. That's kind of really built up a good community because we always have like Scottish warm up artists. Um, and like we did like a string of shows, but it was like takeovers. And I think that was really cool because it meant that we could join up different parts of the scene. So, for example, we would have like an alt takeover, which is more like alternative hip hop. Then we would have like an Afro takeover. And then we actually did one South Asian takeover, which was like the first of its kind in Scotland. So I think because we've done shows like that, like I really want to just bring people together. Like everything I do is to connect the dots and bring people together that maybe they might not necessarily be together. Get what I mean? So I think I really want to fuse that. 'Cause I think that's how we learn. Like we learn by hearing other people's perspectives. Um, so yeah, I guess that's kind of how it's happened. And then because I do like regular studio sessions as well, I'm in the studio with like people kind of every week. So I think people kind of know that. I think when they meet me, they know that like I've got the community. Like that's what is driving everything. Like it's not for my own gain. Like it's for everybody. So I think that's really helped for sure.
One thing you said just now as well, it brought about something that you said during the documentary that I thought was really interesting when you were speaking just now about growing up, obviously, as a South Asian person, but also as a disabled person.
Yeah.
But I remember in the documentary you said that people saw you as being disabled rather than brown first
Yeah.
off, and that just kind of that really made me think, and I found that just so interesting about how there's obviously these various attributes that make up our like social demographic standing and whatnot, but for someone to look at you and see you as more one thing than another, for me, I just found that quite interesting.
Yeah, it's super interesting that like, a lot of people mentioned that that part of the documentary is really like I think it really hit and it really made people think like that it's like that. But generally, like when I grew up, like I feel like people didn't even know I was South Asian. They never spoke to me. They never like. But I guess that's why I've never had any like problems with like racial, like people being racist or whatever. Like I've literally not had one experience of that. But I think it's because they just didn't really see it. Like because the first thing they saw was me in my wheelchair, so it's like they just forgot about everything else and like prioritize what they could see, which is really interesting.
Yeah, it's just weird how like the human brain works, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
speaking about what's to come as well, obviously your debut EP as an artist on the mic was Breathe, that was released back in March. And obviously the documentary is out as well on iPlayer. But in terms of new stuff, you've got your latest release, Talking Crazy, out with Pac and Rocky Fresh, and that's from a new EP that's coming up, right?
Yeah, so that single came out on Friday, and it was really cool just to work with Pat, who's like a Scottish artist that I've been working with for a while. But then also the feature the guy that's on the chorus is Rocky from Chicago. So it's really cool, like as I said earlier, like to fuse the different worlds, but to like create a bridge between scenes. So I think that will be cool for like people that listen to Rocky to then find out about the Scottish scene that maybe they didn't know about. So it was a really cool track, and I was really excited about that one. But yeah, so that's a single coming from a new EP with Pac that will be dropping probably in a few weeks. But then I've also got tracks dropping 3 July, so the 1st of July, a single with an artist called Chelsea K. It's kind of R&B Afro. and then another R&B kind of Afro vibe as well next month. So yeah, I'll be releasing like every kind of 2 or 3 weeks. Is the plan. So a lot of music, a lot of music and a lot of different
Nice.
genres. But yeah, I feel like I would find it too difficult not to mix it up and release because like releasing is like one of my favorite parts of like making music. Like I kind of think about that. It's funny because I feel like that's kind of the opposite to a lot of artists. Like a lot of artists kind of don't like releasing or kind of hold on to stuff, but as soon as I make something, I'm like, I need to get this released.
I think that's nice as well because I think, like you were saying before, about how the main reason you're doing this is for the community, and it's not that because I think, like you were saying about other artists maybe holding on to stuff and thinking about stuff a bit more with a strict methodology. I think that's because they're primary focus is okay, how can I get this song heard by this many people?
Yeah,
What's the
yeah,
most maximum streams I can get on this? Which isn't wrong per se if they're trying to obviously reach further people, but
yeah,
at the same time, it's refreshing to see someone like yourself that is purely based on it's just about the music, the
yeah,
community. That's why you're putting it out, and because you're working with so many different people, it doesn't necessarily matter that you're like releasing things like so often because ultimately that's what a producer does, isn't it? They're jumping on lots of different projects.
yeah. Exactly. I think it's really cool to be able to do that, and I think it is a bit easier, like as a producer, to kind of release more often. But yeah, like I feel like it's all about growth and like growing each other. And the more like we collaborate, we can cross over sounds, audiences. I just think that's the way that we all can benefit. And also like a lot of stuff, I feel like what drives me as well is like showing what's possible as a disabled artist because there's a real, as I said earlier, there's a real lack of disabled artists in the music industry. There's a lot of different reasons for that. Firstly, like getting to stages, which I've done a lot of work about in the past, and we try to raise more awareness and add a petition and stuff like that as well to try and push for access. But also, like as a disabled person growing up, I never really had like a role model, um, like in music, so I never really thought I could do it really until I was older. So I want to try and show like to other disabled people that this path is an option, and also to society that like it's possible and like not to have lower expectations of people with disabilities or try to change how society sees disability. Because I think they kind of see it as something wrong or something that not wrong, but something that's bad. Like innately, people are just like, "Oh, that's bad." When in reality, I want to try and change that perspective because um, it's not all bad, and like I wouldn't be here where I am right now without that. Like it's what gives me my drive and my kind of determination to keep pushing. Um, so yeah, I think that is a big reason of who I am and why I've got to where I am. So I just want to try and push that and just kind of change the narrative. So
For sure, and I think that's why it's good that this documentary is out there as well, because I think a lot of the time, particularly with issues regarding disability, people don't necessarily think about stuff unless it's literally put right there in front of them.
yeah,
Because that was another thing that I found really interesting about the documentary that you just mentioned briefly now, was about how people don't necessarily think about accessibility for artists, because I've seen plenty of people complaining and raising awareness about accessibility for various event spaces, but I don't. Until your documentary, I don't think I've ever seen or thought myself about. Hang on, what about artists that the
yeah.
people behind the stage or on the stage? Like, what about them? And it just never crossed my mind until seeing that documentary. So I think that's why it's really important to get this out there and get people to actually be aware of it.
Yeah, I think it's definitely like a kind of gap in terms of like reasons for disabled artists, but I guess it's because there isn't many like disabled artists to be able to do that, because other people probably wouldn't really know if it's not something they've experienced. So yeah, I really want to try and keep pushing for that. I just show people that like how important it is to be on stage because it's not just a case of being on stage and performing. It's a case of like being on an equal playing field. Um, so like as a disabled person, like if we don't see anybody on stage that was like us, then that kind of role model thing. Like if we don't see that, then it's kind of hard to think you can do it as well. So I think like it's a lot deeper than just being on stage. I think that can really help to change kind of how people see disability as well. So yeah.
Cool. Well, if people want to keep up to date with you and your latest music and what you get up to in the future, where's the best place for them to find you?
Yeah, so my tag on social media is Ask Superman with two N's. So you can follow me on like Instagram, TikTok, and stuff like that. You can keep up to date with what I'm up to, like shows and music and all that. And then also Spotify is Superman on Da Beat. Um, yeah, that'll be releasing really often. It's a good mix as well. There's definitely something there for everyone, I feel like. So yeah, go check it out.